Monday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope you had a great weekend. The Browns had a long weekend after the Thursday night win over the Steelers. Back at work in Berea getting ready for a Monday night game against the Denver Broncos. Kevin Stefanski on if the increased production from Jerry Jeudy is by design, as the wide receiver has played really well with Jameis Winston as quarterback.
I hope some of it's by design, Zach. Yeah, I think Jerry, we know his skill set. He's done a nice job. I mean, he's catching short throws, turning them into long gains. He's catching balls down the field, so he's doing a nice job. He also has made a lot of plays in scramble drill since we've had him, and I think he has an ability to shake open. He's done a nice job.
He's really done a nice job of spreading the ball around. What does that do for the confidence and of the guys running the routes that, you know, they know that he's going to get them the ball?
I think you're always trying to spread the ball around. You want your running backs catching the ball, tight ends, wide receivers, and I think it makes life a little bit more difficult in the defense when you can get five guys out and they have to account for every guy. Obviously, as you know, guys like catching the football, so it helps when everybody's involved and touching it, that type of thing. But I've heard once or twice that, you know, I'm open. You know, talk to Dave Njoku. He's apparently always open. But that's part of it. Yeah, you do want to spread it around.
With that, let's welcome in Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Lyric Chronicle Telegram, as well as brownzone.com. And Scott, all good wide receivers think they're open all the time. They always want the ball.
Yeah, they do. And they're probably open more than the quarterback sees them, but you can't get everybody the ball on each play.
You know, the thing that's maybe underrated about what I've seen from Jeudy, he's made some really nice catches where he's got pretty good hands. I know the concern with him was kind of, you know, at the catch point, contact at the catch point, he doesn't always get through that. But I've seen a couple of catches where it's like, man, that guy's got really good hands.
Yeah, it's weird. I think the drop rate is pretty high, but I've had the same impression, Dave. It doesn't feel like, not that I don't remember any of the drops, but it's not because there's a lot of pressure, whatever, you know. So I don't know if that makes him better or worse, but I know that against the Steelers, he ran some in routes with guys on him. He's made some contested catches. Kevin Stefanski's mentioned that either it was today and or after the game Thursday night, that it's not just one type of route that Jeudy's having success on, and I think that is important. There's the run after the catch. We saw the big touchdown the long touchdown against New Orleans. We've seen examples of that. We've also seen the 5-yard out on 4th and 3, which was, you know, probably the biggest play in that win over the Steelers. We've seen in routes. We've seen out routes. You've just seen a whole different variety, just throwing the ball to him deep as opposed to him catching and running. So I think when you're trying to be an elite receiver, or whatever, however you want to categorize Jeudy, it's necessary to have all those shots in your bag.
All right, so this one is, when I saw this, it's kind of surprising. Browns have a 70-30 pass-run ratio this season. It's the highest pass rate in the NFL. When the Browns go under center, that's only 34% of the time they run the ball, 70% of time on those. The predictability kind of destroys the play-action success that we saw in Kevin Stefanski's offense with Joe Flacco, which was kind of carving up secondaries. It does explain some things. The bigger question is, why has the offensive line struggled so much this season? Is it because they're asking different things of them?
I think that's part of it. Plus, there's been a bunch of injuries across the front, and that certainly hurts the offensive line performance and production. I would say those stats are interesting. Certainly the 70-30, when the Browns had been, you know, a lot closer to 50-50 in Stefanski's first 4 seasons. Now, part of that is a designed plan to go more passing, right? We've talked about that a billion times. They wanted to open up more. They wanted to take advantage of Deshaun Watson's skill set. So that was part of it. Then, you know, they've been trailing all year long. So that leads to more passes. You don't have Nick Chubb. So that's another reason why you're not running the ball. And they didn't have a lot of success running it. So all those factors, those are all factors in that big discrepancy. Where I would quibble a little bit is, I don't know if you need to, I think if you're under center and you run play action under center, a bunch of times, or you're under center and you run it a bunch. Like, I think you can be productive with play action whenever you run it. And I think there's stats that prove that. You don't have to be a great running team to be good at play action. You just have to have the play action element involved. And I think the Browns are getting back to that. That was missing when they were spread. It was missing when it was shotgun into Deshaun Watson. Now with Jameis Winston, you've seen them gradually go back to more under center, more play action, and the return of Nick Chubb, a healthier offensive line. I think all of it contributes to what they hope will be an improved run game going forward. And I thought we saw improvements against the Saints, and some against the Steelers. You know, they scored a couple rushing touchdowns. Nick Chubb had some success in short yardage when they needed it. So I think there have been strides made.
All right, so here's the question, and they're not going to ask you or I, but if they asked you, should we go back to the quote-unquote Kevin Stefanski offense moving forward, or should we stay with this spread-out thing where we're trying to throw the ball more?
No, I think you go back to this Kevin Stefanski play action. If it's mid-zone, wide zone, whatever, some combination of that plays off it well. You know, and it made sense when they went to the more spread system because of Deshaun Watson. But, you know, I don't think Deshaun Watson is going to be a starting quarterback next year. So you got to go with what Kevin Stefanski is comfortable with, what he trusts. Now, that doesn't mean you run it 70 times a game or 70% of the time. Even when they were running it, you know, the top 2 or 3 teams in the league, they weren't running it, you know, it was just probably under 50%. They were probably running 45% of the time, I want to say. So you still need to be dynamic in the passing game. You can't get away from that. But I just think that system is proven in this league. We see it with, you know, San Francisco runs it. Miami runs some element of it. The Saints run that because it's the Kubiak system. Like, you just see all these teams that have success. Matt LaFleur with the Green Bay, like, they all run some variation of this system. So it's proven. Kevin Stefanski's good in it. I think most of your roster is built to run that successfully. So, yeah, I would go back to that and then figure out how to maximize the passing game off of that.
Yeah, and I think the most important part of that is Kevin Stefanski understands how to fix that when it goes awry. I think we saw this year they had no answers when the offense was struggling earlier with Deshaun Watson. They just didn't have the answer on how to get it right, and that's a concern moving forward. This is kind of interesting. So Isaiah McGuire, it's an under-the-radar elite start to his career. And again, it's a small sample size, so we're not comparing them. But just as a point of reference, so far his career pressure rate, 14.8. Myles Garrett is 14.0. Again, not saying he's Myles Garrett. Run grade, McGuire 83.1. Myles' only higher grade was in one of the 8 years. Again, if he can continue to develop and continue that production with more snaps, you got something opposite Myles Garrett. And I guess with any guy, Scott, the thing I always say is I want to see more of Isaiah McGuire. The more I see of him, the more I want to see him on the field.
Yeah, I'll agree with that part. I think you got to be really careful about those stats. Yeah. I've watched every snap multiple times, and it's not like Isaiah McGuire's jumping off the screen at me. I'm not saying he's played poorly, and he's shown up from time to time. But, you know, I couldn't tell you a play he made against the Steelers, and I'm sure he did, but you get my point, that there's a difference between, you know, a game-changer playmaker that a guy like Myles Garrett is versus what we've seen so far of Isaiah McGuire. What I do like about McGuire is he's built like a defensive end. Like, he's got pretty much the same size measurements as Myles Garrett. It's like 6'4", 265. He's a big body. He can set that edge. We've seen that. He's made plays. He had the forced fumble, I want to say, against the Raiders. It was a big play in that game. You have seen him get to the quarterback on occasion. So I do think there's potential there. They drafted him in the mid-round, so they liked something about him. Didn't do much as a rookie. Didn't get a lot of opportunities as a rookie. And that is one of the, you know, quote-unquote benefits of the Zadarius Smith trade, is you will get to see more of Isaiah McGuire and then decide in the offseason. So you have Garrett, obviously. You have McGuire. You have Alex Wright coming back from his torn, I think it was a tricep. I talked to him last week about it. And you got Obo Okoronkwo. So you got those 4 guys. Do you need to go get somebody else? And the Browns have always, under Andrew Berry, tended to go get that, proven free agent, the Jadeveon Clowney, the Zadarius Smith. Do they think they still need to do that, or do they have enough young guys with Obo to have that opposite, the rest of the rotation with Garrett?
So, again, every time the media meets with Kevin Stefanski, they ask him, and the update on Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is there is no update, which in and of itself is concerning. Also, not practicing today, Jedrick Wills, because of the knee. Cedric Tillman, concussion protocol still, along with Jeff Swain. Same thing, and Jordan Akins not practicing as well. Again, none of those are surprising, given that they just had the concussion last game. The concerning thing, though, is JOK. We're just not hearing anything, which might be nothing, but it could be a reason to really be concerned.
Yeah, you know what? I keep getting a lot of questions about that, whether it's, one of my in-laws or just people in general, buddies of mine trying to find out about it. And if they knew that he was going to be 100% okay, and that when he's eligible to come off IR, which I believe is after Sunday's game, then we would know that, right? Like there would not be any secret, it wouldn't be secretive at all if he was going to be able to play next week. So the fact that there's no updates, the fact that nobody has given any kind of long-term prognosis means there is reason for concern if you're the Browns or if you're a Browns fan. So that doesn't mean he won't play again this year. It doesn't mean he won't ever play again. I just think they're waiting for more information. They're probably waiting for tests to clear him. And we know the neck is a sensitive thing. You saw the neck compress when he got hit by, he had the collision with Derrick Henry. So I think fans it makes sense to be concerned. I don't want people to go to the worst case scenario. But until we get an update from the team or JOK himself, I've yet to see him. I know he's been around the building at some point. I don't know if he's there every day. Until we get a better update, then yeah, I think it's fair to worry about if and when he'll play again.
Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, as well as BrownsZone.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason when we return. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back.
I just picked up all the Ohio Lottery holiday scratch-offs.
They're multiplying.
Yeah, multiplying. With the chance to multiply my prize by 200 times with Holiday Bonus Millions.
No, they're multiplying.
Oh, you're in a daze.
A holidays.
Snap out of it. Because even if we don't win instantly, all the holiday games offer a second chance to win up to 1,000 times the price of the ticket.
Wait, did you say up to 1,000 times?
Sure did.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, as well as BrownsZone.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Well, good morning. I wish I could be more excited about beating Pittsburgh, but here's the truth of it. All it's done is prolong the agony. We're still not going anywhere with this guy, and all it did was put some snow on the roof of Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. Unbelievable. Hey, though, guys, have a nice Thanksgiving next week. See you, bye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Scott, the season was lost far before the Pittsburgh game. You'd rather beat Pittsburgh than lose to them. And we've talked about this before. I'm not buying the, get a better draft pick. There's not a guy you look at in this draft that you say is franchise altering. There's no Joe Burrow. There's no LeBron James if you want me to go in a different sport.
Yeah, I mean, even if there were, I'm not a big advocate for intentionally losing. I think it just sends a bad message to your team, your organization, everybody involved, the players out there risking injury. They're out there to win. They're out there to, look as good as they can. I don't think you try to lose. So I'm all for winning, and I get the frustration. I get the disappointment. The Browns are supposed to be good, and they're not this year. Does that take away some of the enjoyment of the Steelers win? Sure, it could. But just looking at that game, by itself. It was a fun game to watch. I thought the Browns played hard. I thought they played well for the most part. They overcame 2 fourth-quarter turnovers and blowing the lead and then came back to win the game at the end, things they've struggled to do this season. So I thought there were definitely signs of progress. Now, the next step is building on that, and they haven't won 2 in a row this year. They have some really tough opponents coming up to finish this season, these last 6 games. I don't think there's a gimme in the stretch. So let's see if they can build off of that. Let's see what Jameis Winston can do. The more starts he stacks. So I get all the frustration, but I think you can still celebrate that win.
So this is from CBS Sports, Week 12 grades for every NFL team. For the Browns, they give them a B. Browns clearly have not given up on 2024 at 2-8. They could have mailed it in for the game, but instead they delivered a knockout punch in a huge upset win at 3-8. Team won't be making the playoffs, but they certainly could play spoiler down the stretch. That the thing that I've said is I didn't want to see them quit, and they played as hard as you would have played if you were in a playoff. In playoff mode. I thought they played their asses off, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I did too, and I think we might have had this discussion last week because there's a lot of talk about quitting and effort after that Saints game, and I didn't see it. I saw the Juan Thornhill questions. We actually talked to Juan Thornhill today, and he said, "Yeah, I didn't go hard enough on that Valdez-Scantling touchdown." He goes, he didn't think he could catch him. He played with him in Kansas City. He's played against him. Said, I didn't think I could catch him, and then he had to weave a little bit, and I probably could have tackled him inside the 5. And he said, I can't do that. It can't happen. That's not who I am. The coaches called him out. He heard the fans call him out on social media. But outside of that, I think this team has played hard all year, and they certainly made a commitment Thursday night to come out and play with effort. You saw it from Thornhill. He was as active as I remember seeing him. He had 7 tackles. He had the solo tackle on the second play of the game. And you just saw it across the board, and they still could have lost that game, right? If Jameis Winston doesn't convert that 4th down or Nick Chubb doesn't score, and it wouldn't have diminished the effort, but the effort got paid off. And I just expect to continue to see, because I've seen it all year. They're a team that works hard and plays hard, even though they haven't got nearly the results that they expected, and you could probably argue they should have had.
Well, another guy that kind of showed up, Myles Garrett. Makes good on a goal of showing he's the number 1 defensive edge rusher, 3 sacks, forced fumble against the Steelers. You wrote an article about it. Take us through that article, and Garrett seemed to be a little motivated by some of the T.J. Watt talk when he won Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's interesting what guys use as motivation. And Myles obviously used that. And it was, Watt's tweet about, I've been here before. It's nothing I'm not used to, I think was the tweet. Instead of celebrating Garrett winning it. And if it's just false or not, sometimes guys make up stuff to be motivated by and upset about. Regardless, Myles took that to heart. And he said, I'm going to come out and prove that I'm the best defensive player in the league in what a lot of people consider a matchup of the 2 best. Garrett and TJ Watt. And Garrett, it's not all Garrett, but he beat him 3-0 in sacks. And, I asked Garrett about this. So how important was that to you? And, he started to give the answer of, hey, I'm not on that side of the ball. I'm not watching TJ. But then he said, yeah, I wanted to come out and make a statement and show I was the number 1 defensive or edge rusher. I think he said the number 1 edge defender. And I certainly think he did that. Not that one game means everything, but he went out and he showed the world on the huge stage just how dominant he can be despite double teams and the Steelers trying to prevent him from wrecking that game. And he gets 3 sacks and a forced fumble in the first half, before the footing gets really bad in that second half. So, I don't think Myles Garrett's going to win Defensive Player of the Year this season, but he's up to 10 sacks. He's the only player in the league to get double-digit sacks in the last 7 seasons. And he just reminds us every so often, and it's been with 3 sacks in 2 of the last 3 games, just how dominant he is. And now what I want to ask him this week is why it's so important for him that everybody thinks he's number 1. And maybe that's just common if you're an elite athlete. You want people to think you're the best, but he certainly went out of his way to express his belief that he is, and I think he wants everybody else to believe he is as well.
Yeah, the other thing that is kind of interesting is, Jameis Winston, and I get the the pregame speeches and all that, and he sounds a little bit like a preacher, which is fine. It seems genuine, but the team seems to rally around him and kind of like him.
Yeah, and I think there's good reason for that. I think he is a likable guy. You said it seems genuine. Everybody you talk to, that's what they say, because I think at first blush, you'd be like, this can't be genuine. It can't be authentic. It's got to be for the cameras or made up. And I've gotten that question a bunch too. And I don't think it is, because everybody you talk to swears, insists, goes out of their way to say how authentic it is. And I've seen Jameis with no cameras around, and he's like that too. So I think that's just who he is. It's kind of amazing that you can have that much energy and enthusiasm all the time. I know I certainly don't, but I think guys gravitate to that. They appreciate it. And in this season, right, this whatever, terrible, disappointing, whatever, however you want to characterize it, season, he seems like the perfect guy because he has that energy. He makes things fun. And, I think when you're playing with Jameis Winston, you forget you're 3-8. You just go out and play. And, on the field, he gives you a chance as well. But I just mean from an attitude perspective.
Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, as well as BrownsZone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yes, Daryl from Dixon. Very pleased with our win over the Steelers Thursday night. It's fantastic. Still saw blown coverage in our secondary. We got to get that fixed. It's happened forever. They did seem to do a little bit better with the misdirection. The defense played good enough. Jameis Winston is not the answer at quarterback, but he might be good enough. We've been way too interested in quarterback for way, way, way too long. And if you stop the run, if your lines are good, then all you need is good enough. You can still do this. But, Jameis is doing good for us now. Like I said, it may be good enough. We'll just enjoy this win and hope we can come out and fight week in, week out.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Scott, yeah, the blown coverages are kind of, it's almost like it was before Jim Schwartz got here.
Yeah, there's been too many of them. I thought overall the defense played pretty solid, like the caller mentioned. I thought they were pretty good against the run. They gave up the 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. One was, on a short field after a Winston fumble. And, it was Greg Newsome on slippery turf, one-on-one on a skinny post. I'm trying to remember what the big blown coverage was. It's not coming to my mind. I don't know if there was an egregious one like we've seen against the Saints and certainly before that against, other teams before that. But yeah, I thought the defense played pretty well, except, it's always except something, right? There's always a couple plays a game. You have a long run to Justin Fields on one of those touchdown drives in the fourth quarter that hurt him. And the Winston discussion's interesting. if you're going to have a quarterback play just good enough, like the caller suggested, and you can certainly live like that, you got to have a guy that doesn't turn the ball over. And that's where Winston would have to make improvement, because if your quarterback's not going to make a ton of plays, you can't have him turn it over twice a game. And we saw Winston do that against the Steelers.
Yeah, fair enough. This is from the Bleacher Report. Every team's move they should make now. For the Browns, they say give Ronnie Hickman more opportunities. Rodney McLeod is set to be a free agent. He's also said he's going to retire for certain at the end of the year. Juan Thornhill is prime cut candidate. That should open the door for Hickman to claim one of the 2 starting safety spots. The final stretch of the season should work as a good audition opportunity. Safety's kind of one of those under the radar things that they got to figure out. I'm with you. I agree. I thought Thornhill played pretty well, and he kind of was like, "Huh, look at that! Thornhill's playing." But he's, for the most part, he's been not what the Browns thought he would be as a free safety.
No. I mean, they cut John Johnson III. Thought it was an upgrade with Juan Thornhill, and he, I would argue, really hasn't been at all. Doesn't have any takeaways in 2 years. It's been, I think it's 17 total games he's played. He's dealt with some injuries, but no takeaways. Not a whole lot of impact plays. I think it's just 2 passes defense, a tackle for loss, a few quarterback hits. This hasn't been a lot there, and it's one of those things where we talk about how do they live, how do they compensate for all the salary cap money that's going to Deshaun Watson next year and then the upcoming years. And you get guys like Ronnie Hickman, that's an undrafted free agent, and he turns into a starter. Now, I don't know if Ronnie Hickman can be your starter going into week 1 next year. And, I think Bleacher Report's right that it makes sense to give him an opportunity. Now, he's been rotating with Thornhill, so he's getting more chances. But if you can get a guy like that, you mentioned Isaiah McGuire earlier. Like, if those guys become starters or at least key rotational players, it saves you some money on those free agents that you'd have to come in to fill those roles. So the Browns need guys like that to step up. You can throw Cedric Tillman into that group. Seeing more of Hickman certainly makes sense because, they can get out of Juan Thornhill's contract after the season, and it certainly seems like they will choose to do that.
All right, so the other thing, this from the 33rd team. Jack Conklin matched up with T.J. Watt, 24 pass snaps on Thursday Night Football. Conklin allowed Watt to generate just 1 pressure. Again, that from the 33rd team. Jack Conklin played pretty well since he's come back.
Oh, he really has. And that was as tough a matchup as he's going to have, right, T.J. Watt? And I know they helped him. They gave him chips with the tight end and the running back. But it wasn't every snap. He had some one-on-one with T.J. Watt. I went back and I was watching the first half of the game today, and there was one where Winston completed a critical pass, and Jack had him one-on-one, and he shut him down. He pushed him around the corner, and Winston had plenty of room to throw the ball. So that was a big game for Conklin. I talked to him for a few minutes today, and he really feels like he's back to the player he was before the knee injury. And, he was a 2-time All-Pro. He plays at a high level when he's healthy. And for him to feel like he's back there, I think is really important. And, he said he never had any doubts about it. It was just a matter of being healthy. But it's just amazing to me that a guy can go through everything he's gone through and say, yeah, I'm still going to play at that level. I think he's 30 years old. But he feels like he is. And, I think the outing against T.J. Watt was proof that he is back to being the player he was, or at least close.
So this is also kind of interesting. So if the Browns decide to not bring back Ken Dorsey as the offensive coordinator, here's a guy that probably could be a really good fit, Clint Kubiak. Saints already fired their head coach, so there's a pretty good chance that Kubiak will be leaving New Orleans. He coached with Stefanski on the Vikings staff. Stefanski comes from the Gary Kubiak scheme. That's his dad. And the Saints have a top 10 rushing offense with Kubiak as their offensive coordinator this year. And Kevin Stefanski's been asked last week if he was a finalist when they brought in Dorsey, and he wouldn't answer the question. So if you draw and connect the dots, that might be a pretty good move there should they decide to move on from Ken Dorsey.
Yeah, it's certainly a name that makes a lot of sense. My guess is he was not a finalist last year just because they were looking to diversify. And it wasn't all about the Kubiak Shanahan scheme, right? It was bringing more college influence and the Ken Dorsey influence, you know, going back to maximizing Deshaun Watson's skill set. So I think they're looking to go outside the box. Now, given that I don't think Deshaun Watson will be the guy next year, given what we talked about going back to that Shanahan scheme, the Stefanski scheme, the play action, yeah, Clint Kubiak would make a bunch of sense. The only thing that gives me pause is, are they too similar? Like, is it just all the same? And you want those other voices? Would Stefanski want to go back to calling plays? Does he think he's kind of maybe too big a shadow for Kubiak as opposed to letting him go somewhere else? Those are things I think they'd have to address. But he certainly makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, it's just something to kind of monitor as things develop and progress here relative to the Browns' offense next year. Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear some thoughts about the Broncos and their rookie quarterback, Bo Nix. Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, as well as BrownZone.com. Browns will face the Denver Broncos in Denver coming up Monday night. Broncos 7-5, kind of surprising. They start a rookie at quarterback, Bo Nix, guy who has played a lot of college football. Kevin Stefanski asked what he has seen from Nix.
He's doing a nice job. He's a good young player, played a lot of football in college. You see that he's makes smart decisions with the football. He's a good player. I think just in general, it's like reps. It's getting another turn at it. You look at quarterbacks, a lot of times you look at games started when you're talking about college quarterbacks and part of your evaluation. So that's certainly something that I think he utilizes to his advantage and just experience and seeing different things.
And again, Scott, it's kind of interesting. You know, he was 12th overall. He was the fifth quarterback taken. And he's played really well the last couple months.
Yeah, he has. And I haven't seen a ton of him. I went back. I started watching the Raiders game from yesterday and saw, maybe it was the first half. But I know I was watching some national shows this morning, NFL Network and ESPN, and they have him as like the leading candidate for Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think he's passed Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels on that rookie quarterback list right now as far as who's playing the best. And, you know, a lot of things go into that. Sean Payton is a great fit for him, played a ton in college, like you mentioned, so you should be able to hit the ground running better. But, yeah, I mean, he's got the Broncos position to go to the playoffs. He feels like he can make every throw. Just watching that little bit that I watched, the one thing that jumped out at me is it's a lot of off-platform. Like he'll be rolling right and kind of jump and throw it. Doesn't have to be set to make a throw. You know, and I liked what I saw of him in college. And, you know, if Sean Payton likes you as a quarterback and feels he can trust you, then that's saying something. And you can do a lot. I mean, we've seen Payton have success when he really has confidence in his quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind that Sean Payton's a guy that chased Russell Wilson out of Denver, and Wilson's playing pretty well with the Steelers, and this is the guy he wanted. This is from the Bleacher Report as well, ranking the NFL's best trade pieces of the 2025 offseason. So they list a couple of quarterbacks. Number 6, Geno Smith. Smith's contract expires after the 2025 season. Seems unlikely that the Seahawks will re-sign him. Even if Seattle stumbles down the stretch and misses the playoffs, desperate team may be willing to trade for Smith during the offseason. Would be a one-year commitment. Number 7 on the list, Kirk Cousins. Atlanta made the big offseason splash in free agency. Cousins, 4-year, $180 million contract, has a $40 million cap number next season, but he's still effective enough to have a legitimate trade market. So those are 2 quarterbacks via trade. The cap number, I know people want to connect the dots with Kirk Cousins and the Browns and Kevin Stefanski. $40 million cap means it's 86 at least between he and Deshaun Watson's contract. I can't see that. Can you?
Well, I think it's 113. Watson's cap is 73 next year. No, I can't see that. I know from a cash perspective, Kirk Cousins seems it's doable. Like from a cash perspective, the $40 million. I mean, that's not a ton for your starting quarterback. It is when you're paying another quarterback, when you have another quarterback taking up $73 million on your cap. Just from a player perspective, he's certainly interesting. It was like in the right system, we've seen him have just huge games. We've also seen him not win enough big games, right? Like he's kind of that Midland quarterback where just can't quite get you far enough, but he'd be an upgrade over what they have. I do think Geno Smith is intriguing. Would be cheaper, certainly. I think you could run the play action stuff with him, resurrected his career. Of all those kind of mid-level, lower-level guys that are going to be in this discussion for the Browns in the offseason just because we don't know what they're going to do at quarterback, he would be one that would have my interest if he were available.
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind is I'd like to see him with Kevin Stefanski based on some of the guys Kevin Stefanski has had. I mean, Jacoby Brissett looked really good in Kevin Stefanski's offense. Now, Geno Smith doesn't have like the arm that jumps out like that, but I think he does things well enough that Kevin Stefanski could tailor a game plan and an offense around him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's a former second-round pick, so people saw something there and went away, went to the bench, came back, and I think he's been a real success story since he's been in Seattle. I mean, I watched him beat the Browns up in Seattle last year. So, I've seen him make a lot of plays. I think there's a lot to like. I think he's a good, like a good guy to have on your team. I think he's a good leader. Teammates are drawn to him. So, yeah, he's a guy that would have my interest.
All right, same article. They list a couple of wide receivers. I mean, the Browns are, always looking for those. So 3 on this list, or number 2 rather on this list, Cooper Kupp, wide receiver from the Rams. Rams would be left with a 17.3 dead cap hit if they trade him before June 1st. They could save $20 million in cap space with a post-June 1st trade. Kupp has only $5 million in guaranteed salary for 2025. Both player potential teams involved could benefit from a rework deal in that hypothetical. They also list number 5 as Deebo Samuel. Samuel, the most expendable wide receiver on the roster. 49ers recently extended both Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings. They used first-round pick on Ricky Pearsall in the 2024 draft. One realistic hesitation is that if Kyle Shanahan-led offense can't spark Samuel, what offensive coach can? He'll be 29 with only 1 year remaining on his contract. Samuel's upside still may be appealing to another team. So it's kind of interesting. Both those names intrigue me. When you look at the Browns, I think they still need a quote-unquote number 1 guy to kind of let Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku and all those guys kind of settle in to where they can be really effective threats.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not sure if either of those guys fits that. I know Kupp had the crazy numbers, right? He was Offensive Player of the Year. So, but, he's a lot of, it feels to me, I haven't watched a ton of Rams, but it seems like he's a lot in the slot. He's not necessarily down the field, huge play kind of guy. It's a catch and run underneath stuff. And maybe I'm underselling him, and that's just the impression I have of him. But you get my point. He's not the 6'3" guy that you're going to say, okay, here's my number 1 guy. But you have Cedric Tillman, who's got that size. You have Jerry Jeudy. So could these guys, kind of ham and egg it but among that group? And you probably could. I'm intrigued by both those guys. I do like that both systems are similar to what Kevin Stefanski runs. The Rams, McVay, and then Kyle Shanahan with the Niners. My only hesitation would be those are 2 great coaches who run similar schemes. Why are they willing to give up on these guys? And I get maybe it's just money, maybe it's age, but that would be my little hesitation. And I think that, Cooper Kupp in 2022 would have been a no-brainer. I don't know about 2025.
Yeah, I'm with you. The anytime you're talking about trade, my question now becomes, why does the team moving on from this player know something that we don't? All right, the last guy that we'll talk to you about on this list, Joel Bitonio. Contract runs out following the 2025 season, which would be the lineman's age 34 campaign, unless the Browns get a sense that Bitonio is considering retirement. Risk of leaving for nothing in free agency is a piece of that discussion. That'll be interesting to see where Joel's head is. The last couple of years he's been pretty banged up.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it got to the point last year where, I felt the need to ask him if he was going to come back. And he said he was, and he didn't really hesitate. He said Andrew Berry asked him the same thing. So it's just that point in his career. You mentioned the beat up. I think he's still playing well. Is he playing at the all-pro level? Maybe not, that he did a couple years ago. Having said that, I think Joel Bitonio is the kind of guy that you want to retire as a Brown. And if you believe you're still a contending team, and if he believes you're still a contending team, I don't think either side wants to move on from that. So I think if he wants to be here, you keep him here, and you try to win with Joel Bitonio. Yeah, and if he's played well enough, if he played any other position other than guard, maybe center, you'd be talking, he's kind of a borderline Hall of Fame type guy. As a guard, it's really tough, though. Yeah, it's, there was a push for him, and Joe Thomas was behind that push when Joe was talking about his, Hall of Fame. But then you really have to wrap him up. So he would have to rack up a couple more Pro Bowls, I think, before that discussion would have some legs. Scott Petrak, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Great stuff, Scott. Thanks very much. Thanks, David. Scott Petrak, make sure you check him out. He is the Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. Catch him on brownzone.com on the internet. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan and Cleveland Browns on SI. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
I just picked up all the Ohio Lottery holiday scratch-offs.
They're multiplying.
Yeah, multiplying. With the chance to multiply my prize by 200 times with holiday bonus millions.
No, they're multiplying.
Oh, you're in a daze.
A holidays.
Snap out of it. Because even if we don't win instantly, all the holiday games offer a second chance to win up to 1,000 times the price of the ticket.
Wait, did you say up to 1,000 times?
Sure did.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. Good game last night. I think we got a quarterback already in the building in Jameis Winston. What do you think, Dave? I'd lock him up for a few years until they do find somebody. I don't know what you think about that. And football's getting interesting again. But, yeah, what do you think about locking Jameis up for a few more years? Be good, brother. Be safe. Have a good holiday, and love you, man.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Spencer German, 92.3 The Fan, as well as Cleveland Browns on SI. Spencer, I said when they signed him, I thought he was a starting caliber quarterback. The one caveat, I'd like to see him turn the ball over less. I think probably everybody has said that that has seen him play. What are your thoughts on him about being a bridge quarterback?
Yeah, is it okay to say wait and see? Because here's the thing, like I think a lot of people, and for good reason, like anytime you beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's an exciting thing in this town. You know, Jameis is running around after the game asking if he's a Cleveland Brown now because he beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, it's all in good fun. And when you do it in a game of that scale, with the snow coming down, you know, and it's on a nationally televised game, like a national stage, everyone's watching, only show in town, as Myles Garrett sort of alluded to. Like, of course, we're all going to cling to that thing and get all excited about it. So I do think there's a lot of like hyperbole around Jameis right now, where people are really amped up and they're like, this is our quarterback. And we're forgetting that, like, in that game, he threw an interception right to a guy and he fumbled the ball as well. That cost the Browns. So, like, I'm not saying he can't be the bridge. And I think that's the key distinction here. Like, I'm very intrigued by the way he's played. I'm with you, Dave. Like, when they signed him, I was like, okay, like, this is a guy who, you know, you're kind of forecasting these things. Like, if Deshaun got hurt and missed a couple games, obviously he got hurt and he's missing a lot more than a couple games. But if Deshaun got hurt and missed a couple games, okay, like, you would count on a guy like Jameis Winston to kind of hold down the fort for you for like 4 weeks or so and, you know, not lose control of the season. And I think we're seeing exactly that, right? Like, he's 500 when he's starting and he can do some good things. And we see the talent that got him drafted number 1 overall back in 2015. We've also seen the guy who put up a 30 season with 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions. So I'm not saying he can't be part of this room. I think right now I'm kind of at a place where it's like, I'm open to him being part of this group next year, whatever it looks like. And the conversation right now is that they're going to bring in competition, including Deshaun, who's kind of stuck in where he's at right now, given the contract. But like him, maybe Jameis is part of that. Maybe DTR still is. Maybe you draft a rookie and you throw him into the mix. Or, you know, one of these other quarterbacks that you and Scott were talking about might become available. Maybe that's where the way you go with this. But yeah, like I'm open to him being part of this conversation. I'm open to that being something that we talk about in the offseason. I don't know, though, if just because we got this really special game that I'm 100% sold all of a sudden that Jameis Winston is the bona fide bridge quarterback. I think I need to see a little bit more before I'm convinced on that.
Yeah, I think the part of the thing is the offense and the wide receivers look dramatically better with Winston than they did with Watt. Now, they looked so bad; it's a low bar. I'm not. I mean, they just did. I'm a guy that I was all for the Deshaun Watson thing, so I'm not waffling there. All right, this is interesting. Well, this is from ESPN.com. Week 12 questions and takeaways for the Browns. Will the Browns play spoiler during the stretch run? 4 of its final 6 games come against team with winning record. Cleveland has the opportunity to play spoiler a few more times. Could create optimism heading into the offseason after a disappointing first half. They also say describe the game in 2 words. No quit. 4 days after giving up 21 points in the fourth quarter of a blowout loss to the Saints, their 7th defeat in previous 8 games, Browns delivered a gritty victory at home against division-leading Pittsburgh. Most surprising performance, Jack Conklin held T.J. Watt to just 1 pressure across 24 matchups. It was just the 2nd game of the season that Watt was held to 1 pressure. The thing about that is Jack Conklin, you know the old saying, when you don't talk about an offensive lineman, he's doing his job. They haven't talked about Jack Conklin since they put him back at starting right tackle.
Yeah, I was just having this conversation actually I think after the game on Thursday, so like late last week, just how impressive Jack Conklin has been. And you know, it's interesting because at the start of the season, he was coming back from the knee injury and it kind of became a prolonged process because then he sort of tweaked his hamstring at a practice leading into week 3 when it looked like he was going to be coming back. and that kind of, or I guess week 1, and then it delayed his return for a couple more weeks. But yeah, like it's his contract is one of these ones that you maybe thought about. Can the Browns get out from it at some point? You know, he's going to be a big cap figure still for another year or so, and they got to start thinking about like how they're going to strip things down and rebuild. But the way he's playing, you know, this Browns team is in a really interesting spot. You know that, Dave. Like they got to start sort of preparing for the future while also still trying to be competitive because they have guys on this roster like Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, etc., who are kind of, you know, they're at the prime of their careers trying to win now. So as they're trying to thread that needle, all of a sudden, like the conversations around Jack Conklin and his contract, I think kind of go away so long as he stays healthy the rest of the year, because it certainly looks like you have a guy at right tackle that can be your everyday right tackle, and that provides some stability on the right side of the offensive line in particular, where you know you'll have Wyatt Teller, you know you'll have potentially him, you know, Ethan Posick, but back next year as the center. And then it's just going to be maybe about figuring out the left side of the offensive line, depending on what Joel Bitonio does. And then obviously if DeJuan Jones becomes your left tackle or if they decide to draft a guy, that's a big question. But yeah, to have that stability and know that he's playing at a level where he maybe warrants not touching that contract and not making him like a cap casualty or anything. I think that's good news for the Browns as they kind of picture what this thing's going to look like moving into the offseason.
Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan and the Cleveland Browns on SI and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. We'll continue talking Browns when we return. Stay with us on Sports4CLE.
I just picked up all the Ohio Lottery holiday scratch-offs.
They're multiplying.
Yeah, multiplying. With the chance to multiply my prize by 200 times with holiday bonus millions.
No, they're multiplying.
Oh, you're in a daze.
A holidays.
Snap out of it. Because even if we don't win instantly, all the holiday games offer a second chance to win up to 1,000 times the price of the ticket.
Wait, did you say up to 1,000 times?
Sure did.
We continue talking Browns with Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan and Cleveland Browns on SI. Browns linebacker Jordan Hicks with what he has seen so far from the Broncos on tape.
Looked at them a little bit so far. Obviously, they're playing really well. Looks like they're playing really good complementary football. Offensively, right? It's a Sean Payton offense. You know, they're gonna scheme. They're gonna do what works. And, you know, they force you to play sound football. So, obviously, run game, they're going to test us there. We got to be able to stop that week in and week out. But I think Bo Nix is playing pretty good, right, for a younger guy, somebody that's, you know, dynamic, able to escape, make every throw, and is going to test you, you know, on all levels.
And Spencer, so they, you know, Browns trying to get back-to-back wins for the first time all season. And again, that's, you know, what do you want to see? You got to be a little more consistent than the Browns have been at any point this season.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing, right? Because they've talked a couple times this year when they've gotten wins about turning it into a streak. They have yet to do that this season. And you know, this is your first opportunity in a couple of weeks to kind of get back on track and do that. And I think they're taking pride in that idea. You know, we talked a little bit earlier from the ESPN article you shared about them being a spoiler the rest of the way. Like, I think there's something to say about that. They still have, you know, 3 division games to go against each of the division opponents. And maybe there's an opportunity there to finish with a winning record in the division. So, you know, there's some things to still sort of be motivated about. This Broncos team, obviously, I think has been one of the more surprising teams of the season. I think people maybe thought they were going to take a step back after sort of parting ways with Russell Wilson and going through a little bit of a rebuild. But I think that speaks to just the consistency that Sean Payton brings to the table. And let's face it, I mean, I kind of laughed at the Bo Nix pick. You know, Sean Payton was kind of touting how he baited the Vikings into taking J.J. McCarthy because they really wanted Bo Nix a couple picks later. And the fact that he's gotten him to play at such a high level, you know, I think he's leading the Rookie of the Year race. I mean, it's been impressive to see him just kind of learn as he goes. And that is that Sean Payton factor work. He's one of the best offensive minds in this game for a reason, and he's certainly getting a lot out of him. And I think that's on top of the fact that Denver's just been, that place has been a house of horrors for the Browns to play in. They just, for whatever reason, do not fare well against Denver, especially in Denver. And it feels like you're going to another game where you're kind of counted out, and maybe that works in their favor.
So one guy who will be a little bit extra motivated, all likelihood, Jerry Jeudy. That's the guy that the Browns got from the Broncos in the trade. Over his last 4 games for the Browns, 24 catches, 379 yards, 1 touchdown. He has really looked pretty good with Jameis Winston at the quarterback. So I know you kind of are thinking this. Do you think he's proven it can be a suitable number 1?
I do. Yeah, I think he's played really well. This is one of those moves where there's definitely criticism to be had about Andrew Berry and some of the moves that he's made, especially with some of his draft picks and those guys not turning into anything, or a number of those guys not turning into much. But some of the trades he's made at that position specifically, Amari Cooper was a big hit. I think Jerry Jeudy, they sort of took a chance on that one. People criticized them at the time for the contract extension. But he's put up when the offense, now that the offense has gotten going and Deshaun's not out there sort of mucking things up and it's not this slog anymore, he's been phenomenal. And even when Deshaun was out there, like Jeudy was kind of the one guy that he depended on the most. So it's been good to see. He's on pace right now to reach that 1,000-yard plateau that everyone sort of talked about when he got traded to Cleveland. And it was like this big sticking point for people. Well, he's never had a 1,000-yard season, even though he only came up like 17 yards shy or whatever it was a couple years ago. I think he's proving sort of before our eyes that he can be that guy. Now, should that prohibit the Browns from trying to add to that room? Absolutely not. I heard a little bit of your conversation with Scott just about some of the other guys that could be out there. And yeah, I think there's something to be said for some of those other options. Maybe you draft a guy if you aren't going quarterback in the first round. Maybe you look to this wide receiver class and find a guy that you really like, and you can bring in another option that way. So I'm not saying this that Judy's breakout should prohibit them from adding at the position, or maybe even finding somebody who's better than Jeudy and Jeudy becomes the number 2 guy. But I do think that he's at least shown you if they go the route of drafting a rookie. And that it's going to take that player some time to sort of get into the swing of things in the NFL level. I think Jerry proved that he can sort of be the steady presence as a number 1 guy in this receiver room.
So what are you paying attention to? Denver and the final couple of games. I think you and I were talking last week, and we wanted to see them not quit. And there were a couple of times in that Steelers game where they could have quit. I mean, let's be honest. The turnovers in the fourth quarter, you could have. There was none of that. They played hard, and you know what? That's a credit not only to Kevin Stefanski, but the players didn't mail it in.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. And I know, like you said, we did talk about that last week a little bit. Like that to me is the ultimate sign that a coach still, is getting the respect he deserves in a locker room, right? Like if he loses the team and they quit, and they just aren't trying out there, that to me is maybe a sign that you maybe should consider moving on from your head coach. But we haven't seen that from Kevin Stefanski. We haven't seen that from this group. I mean, you mentioned Thursday night. Of all the games to quit, that was the easiest one you could have quit on, right? Like the weather's coming down, it's cold. You could have felt as sorry for yourself as ever. And, then Jameis turns the ball over a couple times and you almost give the game away, and they still sort of fought through to win. And it created this really exciting moment in a season that's felt pretty miserable for fans, and people are still talking about this game. Like, so that was really cool. I do think like that's a big piece here, is them not quitting is maybe number 1 on my list of things I'm watching for. Like we talked about with Jameis, just seeing if he can cut down on the turnovers and really prove like, yeah, I can manage this thing without being such a risk at times. And then, yeah, I think just seeing how they kind of fight through the rest of the season, how they play in the division, because those games are always tough. I think that matters. And then I guess there's also a factor of like some of the younger players, seeing how they develop, because, like a guy like Isaiah McGuire is getting a lot more snaps now. What does he kind of look like as an option next year? As you're looking for somebody to line up opposite of Myles Garrett, I wish we were saying the same thing about DeJuan Jones at left tackle, but unfortunately he's done for the season. But yeah, like there's probably an element to that as well. And I think that also extends to even the veteran players a little bit, where you're looking to see, okay, is this guy still a fit, or is this a position that you're looking to need that you're looking to have to fill in the offseason?
Spencer Germ, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Spencer.
Always a pleasure, Dave. Have a great holiday.
Sounds good. Spencer Germ, make sure you check him out, 92.3 The Fan. Also, Cleveland Browns on SI. Always good Brown stuff. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.